I feel like I've made a lot of mixing videos and tutorials and full guides and stuff like that, and this is definitely going to be a full guide. But one topic that I want to talk about to start is one that I don't think I've ever properly addressed before, and that's relativity. I mention it a lot, but I think that the best way I saw it explained was in an Ethel Cain video. This one actually, it's really interesting. Ethel Cain is an interesting person in general. Anyways, she explained somewhere in this video on a complete tangent that every single musician has a way that they perceive how mixes should be layered. And I think that's the most important thing to understand right off the bat, is that not only do you need to use relativity in terms of the way you mix and level things against themselves in your own mix, but we need to understand that from mix to mix and from mixer to mixer in terms of who's actually engineering it, the concept of relativity itself is relative, so it's going to be different for everybody. So my goal with this first section is to explain the way I use relativity to make sure that my mixes are consistent in each project, but to also demonstrate that this idea is relative to the way I make music, which is why I think it's important to immerse yourself in many different ways of studying the same topic so that you have a more robust and complete understanding of it as a whole. Anyways, I dropped this video on the back end of my website and you can access it by joining my label, but I want to give you just a brief overview about how I understand the concept of relativity as it applies to my mixing. So the bass elements, the low end stuff, is usually going to be the loudest thing in the mix, and this includes everything from an 808 to my bass guitar to the kick drum. And then next is going to be the snare. That's the second loudest thing in the mix. And then next are things like hi-hats, open hats, triangles, or anything else that kind of sounds metallic-y. After that is all the other perks, and then the melody will be the lowest thing. And as I've explained many times, it will not be perceived as very quiet due to its frequency distribution. But again, if you want to understand all the nerdy stuff, check out this video, link in the description below. With that being said, let's get into a demonstration of how I would use this relative leveling concept in an actual project. Okay, so like I was saying, this is a pretty straightforward process, and we'll do this in the channel rack, and then in the next section, we'll do it in the mix fader when I explain the gain staging. But basically, we're going to mute everything and just start with this kick because that tends to set my levels. And again, I'm really just looking at this meter here. It's reading a little bit and I want to give myself some headroom right there. And I like that. Next is the bass, and I'm going to have that tucked in just under. And I'm more so listening than trying to look at anything, which is why I think it's particularly good to get like skilled at this part. Because it requires you to listen more so than look at like levels and look at frequency imagers and stuff like that. When you get really good at mixing with your ears, that's when you know you're like getting better at it. I like that. And then next is the main snare. Quieter than that low end, but still going to be one of the loudest things in the mix. And then boom, now we're moving. Where's the rest of the snares? Oh, that's sounding nice. And then we move on to those metallic elements I was talking about. Cowbells would be included and stuff like that. For me personally, anything that just kind of has that metallic texture to it. It's a little loud. And then the hats, which drive the bounce so much. Kind of quiet. I like that. Now just bring in those melodies. Level from on to off. From off to on. Bring in that second pad. Same thing, off to on. Maybe we'll pan both of those just slightly away from each other. Maybe a little bit more since they're well distributed in the frequency and since they're pad textures. Oh, that's sounding dope. And that's basically my relativity in a nutshell. Like, I didn't even put it in any effects in the mixer yet or anything. Like, I could really just export this and send it to an artist and they would love it. So pretty straightforward process. Let's get into the next thing. All right, so for this next part, I have to be really clear. Do not make me repeat this tip again. I'm getting pretty tired of it. Use a soft clipper and mix into your soft clipper. Now that necessarily means that you've got to put it on right when you start. And before you start complaining about, I can't afford a soft clipper, TR5 is too expensive, God Particle is out of my budget. Look, I made a blog post that will teach you how to make one. 100% for free if you have a demo version of FL Studio and like 5 minutes to spare. So there is literally no excuse for you not to be mixing into your soft clipper right away. And this isn't like my advice. This is something that the top engineers in the world say. I actually got this tip from Jason Joshua, and if you don't know about Jason Joshua, you should look into him because all of his advice is really good. That being said, I'm going to use my own soft clipper chain, which you can access by purchasing my Elysium multi-kit. And then I'm going to go through that concept of relativity one more time, but this time we're going to do it with the mix faders while I briefly explain the concept of gain staging. Again, if you want the full meat and potatoes of the concept, link below for that brand new full mixing guide, which covers all of my brand new concepts. All right, so for this beat, I already have my soft clipper chain on, and for this, just briefly covering gain staging, it's really just to let you know what gain staging, like the point even of it is just to make sure that you're checking your levels at every stage of leveling. There are many stages of leveling. It's not just when you get into the fader that you start leveling. You can start leveling even in the playlist in FL Studio these days. There's a gain knob for you right there, right? Everything is a gain knob, and every stage where there's a gain knob would be considered a phase of gain staging. If the word starts to make sense after hearing that, that's because you finally grasped what it is. If anyone tells you it's anything different, trust me, they're just waffling about some nonsense trying to cope with the fact that they just won't practice it. I'm tired of people over explaining it. That being said, and I've already done it in the channel rack for this beat, so now I'm just going to walk through it one more time, basically using the same concept of relativity that I explained to you in the first step of this video, but this time just in the mix fader. So again, let's start with that kick. And just to make a quick note, not only am I mixing into my master effects, but I'm also mixing into things like my buses and my sends and stuff like that. So if you want to know how to set up your own signal flow, check out this full guide, which I'll link below for you as well. So I'm looking for a good point where my kick sounds nice and thumpy and where I can pretty much just anchor the rest of my mix. I like that right there. So next is going to be this 808, and we'll just start leveling that from off to on. Right there, just tucked right under that 808, and then we'll just start bringing in the snares. No, this is sounding crazy, bro. A little bit of good leveling, good mixing, and some solid sounds go a long way, I'm telling you. I think this is the snare fill right here. Cool. I think this is another snare here, just another accent snare. Oh, sounds so good, dude. Let's bring in some of these metallics. This is sounding crazy, yo. Now we can bring in that first melodic element, which is that tubular bell, and then we'll bring in, it's kind of a perk, so that's why I'm just mixing it in now, and then we can bring in the rest of these perks, which is really just this cash-in perk. Kind of loud. I want it to be present, but it should definitely be more quiet than pretty much all my drum elements. And then lastly, we'll level that melody in. And so one last thing I'll do is kick off my headphone monitors, which I have on right now, and I'll just listen to the mix on my speaker monitors just to kind of take advantage of the fact that I have a few tools at my disposal to hear what it sounds like on some bigger monitors, which do tend to give you a more clearer understanding of how the sound will be distributed overall. But again, once you get a good feel for things, you'll be able to do it no matter what pair of headphones you have on. Actually, it's really good to be able to mix no matter what quality of speaker you're using, to be able to trust your ability so well that you could do it no matter what kind of headphones or speakers you have. Of course, you want to use quality things, and you want to use the most quality thing at your disposal whenever you can, but not having the most expensive thing is never an excuse to keep yourself from getting better, because practice is the thing that trumps all of that. So let's get into the next section. All right, so for this last section of things, I just want to be as clear as I possibly can about this because I've said it a bunch of times, but basically the only effects that matter are like equalization, delay, and reverb. You can get really fancy with it, but me personally, I only recommend getting fancy once you've understood the basics, which is equalization, delay, and reverb. And I can tell you, as a guy who's been trying to get fancy for over 7 years of doing this, that I realized very recently that you really only need equalization, delay, and reverb. And particularly Usually it's just for the melody, and it's for two reasons. It's to fill the spectrum, and then number two, to keep the melody from getting boring overall. And if you can just make it sound more moist and wet as opposed to really dry and just kind of not filling the spectrum, then you're moving in the right direction. Now you can get fancy, especially if you're talking about using signal flow to create like drum verb buses, but the goal of this video is not to complicate things for you. The goal of this video is for you to finish watching it and then know that you can make a really good mix. So again, if you want like the really nitty-gritty details, link in below for that full guide. But I'm telling you, using these concepts will be enough to take your mix from 0 to 10 in like a couple of days. That being said, let's go through a quick demonstration of how I would use equalization, delay, and reverb to fill up the spectrum of one of my mixes. Okay, this is probably my favorite tip that I'm demonstrating in this video. So this is so important for melodies because the last thing you want to do is ruin it with dumb effects, which took me a long time to learn. So let me just like let you hear this melody really quickly. My homie Too Blessed to Be Stressed made it crazy. And then listen how it goes with the drums, bro. So it's going crazy. So that all being said, the last thing I want to do is ruin any of the sauce that he has done or that I've done by like putting some kind of goofy mixing effects that do not matter. No unnecessary gross beat, no unnecessary portal, nothing like that. I'm really serious about this recommendation right here. So that being said, the melody doesn't sound boring either, because usually good loop makers, and you should be doing this too if you're making loops, like they put decent effects to where like the only thing you should need to do is EQ and then make it stereo separated so it actually fills up the frequency and stuff like that. So again, we're just gonna go through it right now. Really, I'm just gonna hit that console EQ right away. I'm gonna mute everything except that melody. And then right off the bat, because of the way I mix, it's routed to my melody bus already. And then my melody bus has a convolver send, which is kind of like convolution is like a reverb effect, which kind of like gives it more stereo and fills the spectrum a little bit more. So you can kind of hear it. And then if I let it go, that's that reverb that you're hearing at the end, that tail end is coming from the convolver send. Because if I turn it off like that, no tail end. But then if I turn the convolution back on, you can kind of hear it fill up the spectrum, and then you hear that nice little tail end. From there, I'm telling you, it's just like a little bit more EQ if I need it, really. And with this, I'm really just cleaning up, making sure I can catch any dirty frequencies that I might have missed. Hang on, let me go back to the default. I don't know what happened just now. There we go. But anyway, and yeah, I won't even do like a high pass cut or anything like that. It's literally just the tame frequencies. On the higher end over here though, hard cuts are never a bad idea. So something I might do is just low pass over here, change the order to like a steep 8, and then just do a super hard cut around like 17,000. That's usually a pretty sane thing to do. And then from there, it's just adding effects like delay. Fruity delay 2 is something I'll add at the end of pretty much every melody effects chain with this widen preset. And you can already hear how that's just making it sound even wider. And then I'll just usually add some reverb under that. And I'll usually use Fruity Reverb 2. And so I actually have a preset in my free March Madness MIDI multi-kit called God's Room. And it's really good. I'll usually just drag that on and then kind of play with the macro settings a little bit. That's nice. So let's turn off the convolution and turn off all the effects. And you see how it's like kind of just, it's still nice, but it's just dry, you know what I'm saying? The effects just make it sound moist, and I really like that word. It's a funny word, but it adds moisture to it, and it makes it just a more palatable thing for your ears to consume on some real stuff. So that's really the whole concept. And then from there, the drums were already leveled, so you can just level the melody from off to on like we've been doing, and it's just sounding clean and crisp, and I just love that, bro. Good mixing will take you a long way. Sounded crazy, man. So just to briefly recap, relativity is really important just in your own mixing, but then understanding that mixing changes from mix to mix and from person to person. So it's important to have like a very complete understanding. Don't just watch my guides, watch other people's stuff and then make a composite understanding of things that work for you. I'm not gonna say it anymore. Mix into your clipper. From now on, when people ask me why does it suck, I'm not even gonna tell them anymore that it's because they didn't use a clipper. I'm just gonna completely ignore that because I've said it. I'm blue in the face at this point and I'm tired. mix into your clipper. And number 3, you can get fancy with your concepts in terms of effects, but make sure you lock in with the fundamentals that are going to help you clean up your spectrum and have it sounding full, which are equalization, delay, and reverb. Shout out to every single member of Dope, my label. Their support makes it possible for me to provide awesome free content on this channel without doing any corny sponsorships. I love you guys to death. If you want to learn more about joining the gang, get access to that really dope mixing guide I was just telling you about, and just a bunch more stuff that I don't have any time to explain because I'm finna go make more beats, check out the first link in the description below. I love you so much. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you soon. Peace.